Welcome to Performing an Audit During the Coronavirus Best Practices. My name is Garth Sharif, and I was not expecting to have a course titled Performing an Audit During the Coronavirus Best Practices prior to the beginning of 2020. We are in an unprecedented, extraordinary time because of the conditions created by the coronavirus, the pandemic, COVID-19, however you refer to it, both for ourselves personally, our practice, our admin, our staff, and our clients. I've been working in the assurance profession for over 20 years, public practice, now in training, and I don't think I've seen anything like this. And I've seen some large events that have affected our profession, and I'll go through those. But in terms of what the coronavirus has done for our profession, it has disrupted two major areas. One, project management and the way in which we communicate with our staff and admin and our clients. This new normal in which we are remote working from home, and communicating electronically more than ever, maybe using video conferencing software such as Zoom, Skype, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, there's so many. And some practitioners may be very comfortable with this and they were ready for this because they've been using this technology or adapted very quickly to it. But what about the counterparty? What about your admin staff that you're giving directions to, or your clients that you are gathering information from, building your relationship with, understanding what they're going through, and also trying to identify risks? They might be struggling with this new normal and the technology, and also the things in their personal lives, their health. And so this communication line, this disruption to the way in which we gather information, as auditors, we are very social. We have to use inquiry and communication and talk to people to gather information, to project manage our audits. And this has been disrupted, or at least changed, because of the coronavirus. And it's something to consider as we plan for the year ends upcoming for our audits. So that's one big area in which the coronavirus has affected us as practitioners. The second, of course, is the economy and what our clients are going through. Really a difficult time for many of our clients, facing bankruptcy, cash flow issues, trying to figure out ways to pivot from their product or service that might not be doing well because of the conditions of the coronavirus, shutdowns. And we want to be empathetic for our clients. We want to understand what they're going through. But from our lens as assurance practitioners, as those performing audits, comes back to Canadian Auditing Standards 315, identifying and assessing risk of material misstatements. Are there risks that are increased or new this year that were not there in previous years? And you might have been auditing this client for years and years, and the risks have always been the same every year, but this year is so different than any other year that we really want to examine the planning to identify risks, new risks, or increased risks, respond to those, and plan those. And that also includes potentially different ways of gathering evidence, because we might not be able to gather evidence the same way this year. So the focus of this course is for practitioners to think about ways you might need to be proactive in communication, planning, figuring out different ways of gathering evidence, and to really think about that today.